My wife Cheryl and I have been together for 10 years. And we got married 2 years ago. We just got a house together. Not even a month ago. And things couldn't have started on worse notes. We moved to a small inland town of Georgia, called Waycross. That's all the details. I'm giving though to avoid any more possible issues. We're on a quiet street with a big property that sits in front of a medium-sized patch of woods, which was one of the factors that really appealed to my wife. And we plan to adopt a dog and raise kids here. So we wanted a big property for the dog and kids to play around on. We both work similar shifts. I get home around 5, and she gets home around 6 most of the time. The first 2 nights in the house went completely normal. It was the weekend, so we spent our entire days unpacking. It wasn't until Monday night, when we were both in bed, only having turned the lights out maybe 20 minutes ago, that outside from the backyard, there was the sound of this blasting music. Our nearest neighbors on either side were spaced out enough where we couldn't mistake music from their yards being in our yard. It was definitely in our backyard. And it wasn't party music or anything like that. Sounded like very old staticky vintage music. The windows were shut. So after my wife and I exchanged horrified glances at each other and wondered where the music could be coming from, I opened my window on my side of the bed, and it was much clearer. There was some song that sounded like it was from the 1940s or something blasting. I later found out after looking up the lyrics that the song name was Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf by Henry Hall. It has a slight eerie vibe to it, for some reason, even though it was meant to be a happy song. But at the time of listening to it coming from our backyard, it was nothing but downright horrifying. We were still learning the house, but we figured there must be a backyard light switch downstairs. I ran downstairs to the back door and flicked the light switches next to the door, and one of them turned on the backyard lights. I didn't see anyone in the backyard. I opened the door, and the music was louder obviously. But as I walked out into the grass, I realized it wasn't coming from the backyard, rather from the woods. The song played to completion as I was outside in the yard, just standing there looking around. When the song ended, there was silence again. Seemed like someone must have been playing some stupid housewarming prank. But it wasn't appreciated. I went back to my wife and told her it was probably just some kids trying to scare the new ones in town for whatever reason. Hearing myself even say that, I realized how stupid and weird it sounded. Why would anyone do that the next night? It happened again a few minutes after we turned out the lights in the bedroom. Music from outside started blasting, this time much louder. And the song playing was that song everyone's heard, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Cheryl and I once again looked at each other, this time in genuine disgust and worry, because we had hoped it was just going to be a one-time thing. But it was happening again. I looked out the window, and this time I could see something on the grass. It wasn't a person, but there was definitely something out there. I told my wife I was gonna check it out. She said we should just call the cops. And I said, yeah, we will in a second. I went out there with this mindset that I need to establish I'm the man of the house, not just to my wife, but to whoever was thinking they could mess with us just for being the new people on the block. When I was in the yard, I saw the object in the grass was smaller than I had thought, but the blaring creepy song was coming from it. I realized it was an old radio. I turned it off and looked up at the window at my wife, who's watching, and I held it up, yelling that someone left it there to scare us with the music. What she did next was not something I expected. In response to that, she started screaming my name to run inside. She kept screaming, "Run!" I yelled, "Why?" And she screamed back, "There's people standing behind you." This statement made my heart skip a beat, and I turned around to face the woods. I saw 3 figures standing, like 6 feet apart from each other, clearly facing my direction. They weren't running at me. They were just standing there. I yelled, "Oh!" and ran back inside the house, slamming the door behind me. My wife was upstairs, hysterical, crying already. I told her I'd call the cops. And I did. They arrived, thankfully not that long after. All the while, we were scared to hear knocks at one of the doors or windows. My wife and I desperately explained the situation to both of the police that arrived, and I showed them the radio on the ground. I asked them if they could take it back with them as evidence for prints, and told them I only touched the top part with the handle. They did take the radio. They also checked the front of the woods with their flashlights for a few minutes, probably just as a deterrent to the people in the woods to stop their behavior, if they were still there. When the police left, honestly, we went right back to feeling vulnerable and scared, but thank Christ the people never returned. This was only a few weeks ago, though God forbid they came back. I tried to get it on video. After going from living with my parents for 28 years to buying my first house, I'll admit, it was a bit of a shock to adjust to. This was July of 2022. So very recently that I moved in. My house is a 30-minute drive from my parents' house. So we're not that far away. In my parents' house, I would always constantly be awoken at night by my dad going up and down the stairs in the middle of the night. He's basically a chronic insomniac and constantly has to get water or go to the bathroom throughout the night. So having my own place would finally mean peace and quiet, but that doesn't mean my dad didn't pass down his inferior sleeping abilities to me, because I'm a very light sleeper. The layout of my new house is as follows: a small unfinished basement with laundry and boiler room, first floor with living room, kitchen, bathroom, and dining room, and the upstairs with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. 1 bedroom I use as an office, another one I use as a little workout room. For the first couple of days, my dad was over to help me bring in furniture and set the place up. The bulk of it was done after that. Then it was just minor decorating and smaller things here and there. I'd say a week into moving in, I was practically done with the furnishings and fully at home. On a Sunday night, I could tell I was going to have a rough time trying to sleep because I was wide awake. I took a melatonin and a sleeping pill to help, and within an hour, I was out like a baby. Usually, when I take these, I sleep through the night without waking up. This night, though, I woke up. A sound from outside my room woke me up. I was so dazed and confused, freshly woken up from an intense dream, that I wasn't thinking clearly. The noises from outside my room were familiar footsteps going up the stairs. My dad, as usual, waking me up with his middle of the night trips up and downstairs. I tried to drown out the noise and ignore it. I was in such a daze that it didn't even hit me right away that those footsteps couldn't be my dad's. I snapped back to reality and sat up, listening. The footsteps stopped. Now that I was fully awake, I wondered if it was an auditory hallucination. Like, was it just something engraved in my memory that I heard it in my half-woken up state? I actually nervously called out, "Dad." I didn't know what I was expecting to happen, but no one called back. I went out into the hallway outside of my room and turned on the lights to each room. I made it to the stairway, and I looked down the stairs at a tall man in a mask at the bottom looking up at me. It didn't feel like a reality that I was actually staring at an intruder in my house. I didn't see any weapons on him, but I wasn't about to go fight him. I screamed at him, to get the underscore out of my house, definitely with a shake in my voice, believe it or not. He turned around and left through the front door. I ran down the stairs to lock it behind him. When I went to call my dad, I heard the back door to my house slammed shut. There was a second person in the house, who I didn't see. I was full on freaking out. My dad picked up, of course, because he's never asleep, and he questioned why I was calling him, and not the damn police. He told me to hurry. So I called the police, and the operator asked me a million questions. While I waited, I was interviewed by the arriving officers, who asked me for a description of the robbery, what they stole if anything, and which direction they left in, and what vehicle. Unfortunately, I didn't think to watch them leave, so I couldn't even answer what direction they went, and I couldn't get the physical description other than one of them was tall. Because of the mask, it didn't actually seem like they stole anything. But I didn't have anything of real value on display on the first floor. The method of entry was a kitchen window, just big enough to climb through. Experiencing a home invasion is something you always hear about on the news, but never assume it would actually happen to you, much less right after you move into your first house. I wish I could have been more help to the police in identifying them now. I sleep with a knife next to my bed.